demons are born from resentment, and leaving the dead unsettled can make everything worse. The chapter starts with a quiet forest night, but it does not stay calm for long. A sudden strike cuts through that silence, and the bloodied figure in the woods makes it obvious this world can turn ugly in a second. Someone gets a hand clamped right across the blue-haired fighter's face, and the whole scene just screams panic. Then Yise pushes forward, still shaken but trying to help, while the search for the missing kids turns into a desperate scramble through the dark. Unknown says, "Can you stand up?" Yise is pulled into the middle of the mess, and the adults are still frantically searching for the missing children. Then one of them finally spots the kids, and the whole mood flips from rescue mode to pure dread. Unknown says, "The children." Right after that shock, the chapter slams in its title and reminds you this is all part of a bigger demon hunting story. Then the pace drops into a quiet room at Yise Temple, where the temple life looks almost peaceful for a second before the next round of grief catches up. The missing children do come back to Yise Temple, but the reunion is brutal instead of happy. Only 2 of them return, and they bring back the kind of news that makes everybody's stomach drop. Then the truth comes out in the ugliest way possible: Woljang, Gojil, and Uncle Guichin were killed by a demon. Ilshui can barely handle it, he shuts himself in his room, and all that's left is his sobbing behind the door. Unknown says, Woljang, Jiojul, and Uncle Gwe Cheon were killed. While everybody is still reeling, the story cuts to another side of Yise Temple. A purple-haired attendant keeps moving with a tray, and people start noticing that Yise is acting like normal life can still continue after all this. Then the gossip gets sharper, because the others start talking about axe marks on the bodies. And once the rumor spreads that the human boy swung the axe, Yise gets dragged into suspicion whether he deserves it or not. Unknown says, "Did you hear?" The rumor gets even nastier when people start asking if Yise was the one who killed them. Ilshui refuses to explain what happened, so all that suspicion just keeps hanging over the kid's head. Unknown says, "Are you saying that brat might have killed those 2? Then the chapter drops a proper menace reveal: masked figures, a huge twisted monster face, and the bodies laid out after the fight. When Guichin and Gojil are mentioned again, the grief turns into a real hunt for what caused all this. Now the temple starts asking the ugly question: how did a mid-grade Yagui get that close to Yise Temple in the first place? The barrier looked fine, the bodies were recovered, and now everyone wants the full story of that day. Unknown says, "Then how did it get in?" Once the questions start landing, the head's orders go out and the response gets deadly fast. The chapter jumps straight from cold answers into a monster fight so nasty you can feel why nobody wants to mess with this world. Unknown says, "Understood, head." The fight keeps rolling, and now the chapter is showing off how brutal demon hunting really is. A horned fighter cuts through the dark, but the panels around him are packed with blood, monster faces, and bodies getting crushed by the chaos. After the bloodshed, the talk gets even colder. Somebody spells out the cruel choices that were made, and the answer is basically that they were awful, but still the best ones available. Unknown says, "They were cruel decisions." Not everybody is buying that calm explanation, though, because someone immediately calls out how cold it sounds. Then the stern voice in the room puts a stop to the argument and orders everyone to back off from the fallen. Unknown says, "How can you speak so calmly?" The purple-haired speaker is done arguing and tells everybody to leave. The masked followers back off, and that leaves the whole room hanging on the same ugly silence that started this mess. Mongryeon says, "I said leave." With the others out of the room, Mongryeon finally talks to Yise like he's trying to teach him something real. She tells him not to hold it against the others, because grief made them lash out, and then she hits him with the hard truth that swallowing everyone's anger does not bring the dead peace. Mongryeon says, "The dead would somehow find peace?" Mongryeon even notices that Yise has spent a whole year at Yise Temple without being properly taught, so she decides it's time for his first real lesson. That lesson is the consolation ceremony, the rite they use for the departed before a hunter ever gets to call himself ready. Mongryeon says, I'll give you your first lesson. Mongryeon lays out the rule behind the ritual: if demons or the people they killed are not laid to rest properly, that resentment can come back as new demons. Yise worries he might not be the right one to do it, but the whole point is that ordinary people can still perform the ceremony. Mongryeon says, "You're going to hunt demons from now on." Mongryeon pushes Yise to stop doubting himself and just try the ritual. She walks him through the prayer slip, the ritual bell, and the chant for the departed, turning the whole room into a proper farewell for the dead. Mongryeon says, "You won't know unless you try." The ceremony is not done yet, and then the energy suddenly surges with a sharp, strange sound. Right after that, the blame gets thrown back in the worst way possible, with somebody crying out that someone like Yise brought this disaster to Gwizu Temple. Unknown says, "Because someone like you came to Gwisu Temple." That accusation opens the door for the dead to finally speak, and the pain is awful. A bloodied soul cries out, asks why it was abandoned, and the temple explains that the ceremony only really begins when the soul accepts the comfort being offered. Unknown says, "Why did you abandon me?" Mongryeon keeps explaining how the consolation ceremony works, and she gets to the part that really matters: it can fail depending on the relationship, and you need spiritual energy to even see what's happening. But then she notices the dead do not seem to hate the comfort Yise offered, and that gives the whole thing a real chance. Mongryeon says, "You can't see it without spiritual energy." And there it is, the consolation ceremony succeeds. After all that grief and pressure, Yise finally gets the smallest kind of victory, and the last thing he hears is the warning to stop being so hard on himself. Unknown says, "Now, stop being so hard on yourself." So this chapter is basically Gwizu Temple forcing Yise to grow up in the worst possible way. He gets dragged through death, suspicion, demon lore, and a real consolation rite, and by the end, he is one step closer to becoming the kind of hunter this world demands.